Hello everyone and welcome to this fourth lecture on Introduction to Python for Beginners. In this lecture we'll be going over some other important concepts pertaining to Python such as the lambda expression, filter function, map function. We'll be going over some important methods pertaining to strings, lists, and we'll also be looking into something called tuple unpacking. So without further ado, let's get started. In the previous lecture we went over functions in we briefly went over functions, but I would like to revise functions just a bit because the next topic which I'll be going over, which is the map function and the lambda expression, both of these are related to functions. So let's say I have a function over here by the name of function1, and what it does is that it takes an argument of x and returns x to the power of 2. Now that is pretty straightforward. So if I were to call function1 and pass 2, I would get 4. This is how basically a function works. This is how we've been using functions for quite some time. So let's say I have a list by the name of, let's say, SEQ, SEQ short for sequence, and it has 5 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I would like to I'd like to perform an operation on this sequence list in which all of the elements are multiplied by 4. One way of doing this is I define a new list by the name of sequence2, and I iterate over this entire sequence list the way we have done in previous lectures using a for loop. Let's say for items in SEQ, I want SEQ to dot append items time 2. Okay, I apparently didn't define it. Let's run it. SEQ2. So I get my answer is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So that was one way. We already went over this method of using for loops to iterate over elements in a list. But let's say, is there another way which is a bit concise which can be used? Well, apparently there is one, and that method is called the map function. So what the map function does is that it takes 2 commands. The first is the function that we want to apply, which in our case is, let's say, I'll say x multiplied by 2. Function 1 can be x multiplied by 2, which can be the function that you want to apply, and the instance on which you want to apply that function. It can be a list, it can be a tuple, it can be anything of your choice. So let's say in our case it is SEQ, which is this list over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I run this, Python tells me that this map, the statement that you just performed, this has been stored onto memory over here, but I want to see the result. So what I'll do is I'll wrap my entire this map function over here inside of a list command, and I get my answer, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So what I have done over here is that instead of iterating over using a for loop, I've told Python that, okay, take sequence over here, take the sequence list over here and perform the operation of function 1 onto each and every element in this sequence. And that is exactly what happens. I have 5 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now I have 5 elements, but all of these elements have to be multiplied by 2. So no more for loop, just one simple straight line, and I get my answer. So this is how a map function works. But let's make it even more simplified. The thing is that over here I had to define my function 1. Earlier I had to define it, and if I want to perform this map function on a multiple list of different operations, I'll have to define a new function each and every single time. So let's say I want to define a function. Which takes argument x and it returns x to the power of 2. And then and only then can I perform this action. I'll say function, and I get 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. But the thing is that I had to define a function before executing my map command. There is a simplified and a much better way of executing a map function without having to define functions each and every single time, and that command is called the lambda expression. Lambda expression. So what lambda expressions do is that I have this function over here. So instead of me having to define this function by the name of function 1 and saying return x2, lambda expressions just take a variable and a semicolon and a colon, and in front of that column is the operation that you want to perform. It can be x to the power 2, x times 2, whatever the case might be. And instead of having to define lambda expression each every single time, I can directly add them into my map, the map command. So what do you mean by that? I will perform the same operation where I take the element inside of the sequence and I take that element to the power of 2. But now I will do that using the lambda expression. I will say first I will define the operation that I want to perform. I'll say lambda x colon, and the operation is x to the power of 2. And then I will tell the map function that this is the list, or this is the item that you have to perform this lambda expression on. Once I do that, Python will tell me this is where it's stored. Let's see the result. Wrap all of this inside of a list. I forgot to, and oops, forgot a parenthesis. And yes, this is what I get: 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. Exactly the same, but instead of having to define a new function, I just did everything inside of one single line of code. So this is how lambda expressions differ from conventional functions. Lambda expressions can define short-ended codes in one single line. The other command that I would like to go over is the filter command. So let's say I have the sequence that is already defined. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I want to extract only those elements which are you can say even. They are even. And I can do that using the filter command. So the filter command, instead of map, I'll say filter. First, I will define my condition. I'll say lambda x and x modulus of 2, which is basically saying that the remainder of x divided by 2 should be 0. This is my condition, and I apply this condition using the lambda expression. And the second argument is the list or the set or the or the combination of elements on which I want to apply this lambda expression, which is in our case is sequence, which is a list. When I execute that, let's wrap this inside of a list. I get 2 and 4. So basically, the filter command executes this operation onto the sequence, but it only returns those elements which fulfill or which are true in the case of this expression right here. 1, 4, 5, obviously their remainder is not 0, so they will not be returned. They will be rejected. Only 2 and 4 are returned. So this is what the filter command does for us. Another very important operation. Now I'd like to go over a few important methods related to strings. We already went over strings briefly in the previous videos, but let's say I would like to go over a few important methods which are normally used extensively. I say Mohit is a data scientist. I define the string, which is Mohit is a data scientist. This is a string over here. I want to perform a few methods or a few operations on the string. Let's say I want all of my alphabets inside of the string to be in the lowercase or in the uppercase, or I want to split the string. So how do I do that? I'll take my string, I'll put a full stop, and then I'll press tab. When I press tab, I get all of these operations over here. So let's say I want to perform this operation, string dot is lower, and obviously it gives me false. Okay, makes sense. String dot is lower, I get false. I forgot one operation. And let's say I want to take the string and I want all of my alphabets to be small. I don't want all of them to not be in uppercase, in lowercase. So I'll say string dot lower, and I get all of my alphabets in the lowercase. Similarly, I can say dot upper. I get all of my alphabets but in the uppercase. And there are a bunch of different operations that can be performed, such as capitalize, count, encode, find, index, is alpha, is numeric. I'll let you guys practice and experiment with all of these operations. But the most commonly used that I've encountered are string dot lower, string dot upper, and the other one is split. So what does the split command does for us? Split method. When I say string dot split, it takes my string and it splits it on the white spaces inside of my string. I can split my string on any character I want. Let's say I want to split my string on the is string over here. So what I'm telling Python is that split all of the sentence, and this is string should be my breaking point, and that is exactly what Python does for me. So Python breaks it like Moid space, this is one element, a data sign, okay, there is apparently an is over here, right over here, yes. So this is why T has been separated from data sign is. So basically Python has split it on A, on is. Let's say if I want to separate it on A, you guys get the point I'm trying to say. You can separate on any, any string, any character of your choice. I want for another example is that I have decided to split my string on the data string, and yeah, that is what the split command does for us. It splits my string into different elements based on the character that I provided. Okay, moving forward, I would like to go over something called tuple unpacking. So what does tuple unpacking mean and what does it do for us? Let's say I have a list 1, but it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This list 1 has 3 elements, and these 3 elements are tuples. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 3 tuples inside of my list. How do I unpack this? How do I take all of these individual characters out of these tuples? And what do I mean by that is, let's say I want to iterate over this for items in list 1. I want Python to print items. Oh, forgot the parenthesis. I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's good. But if I want to unpack this tuple, if I only want the first, the first characters out of each and every single tuple, I can say for A comma B, print A, and I get the first characters. If I say print B, I get the next 2 characters. You guys get the point. So this is how you can unpack a tuple. If you have a tuple inside of a list or on any single tuple, you can unpack it using this notation right here. For A comma B in list 1, print B. So that's pretty much it for tuple unpacking. And we have performed these, we did perform a few operations on strings, but we can obviously perform multiple operations on dictionaries, on tuples, on set, on lists. It entirely depends on what you're working with, and there's extensive documentation on list, strings, dictionaries. So I'll let you guys experiment with that, but that's pretty much it for this pretty much it for this lesson. In the next lesson I will be creating a few exercises which will give you guys plenty of practice on all of the concepts that we have learned so far, such as while loop, for loop, conditional statements, comparison operators, and yeah, that's pretty much it for this lecture. I hope you guys like it. If you do, give me a like, subscribe, and share this video with your colleagues. Thank you.